Welcome to The Moon Consort of the Inner Palace, brought to you by Elven Made Inn Publishing. This captivating story is written by Kay Bauer and narrated by John Lee H. Wu. Today, we're diving into Chapter 1, released fresh each week for your listening pleasure. So sit back, relax, and let the tale unfold. It was a warm summer night. Through the shadowed alleys of the inner palace, 4 eunuchs bore a red and gold palanquin on their shoulders. Few dared witness its passage. Those who caught a glimpse quickly averted their eyes. The palanquin was meant for the emperor alone. Yet tonight, it carried no emperor. The procession wound toward the northeast corner of the palace to the abandoned Moon Pavilion. Once the residence of the Moon Consort, it had stood empty since the previous consort took her own life within its walls. No one dared live there now. Servants tasked with its upkeep often fled in terror, swearing they felt an eerie presence watching their every move. The palanquin stopped before the Moon Pavilion's rusted gate. The eunuchs knelt in silence, heads bowed. A slender hand parted the silk curtains. A girl, no older than 12, stepped out. She wore white ceremonial robes, far too large for her slight frame. Snow-white hair, bound by a golden hairpin bearing a single delicate bell, swayed gently. Its soft chime was the only sound in the night. No one dared meet her gaze. She was the emperor's new consort. 2 eunuchs rose, heads still bowed, and swung open the creaking gate. She moved forward in silence, her steps light and uncertain. Only the faint rustle of silk and the soft chime of her bell disturbed the stillness. As she passed, one eunuch glimpsed her bare feet against the stone. He said nothing, but thought, highly improper for a consort to walk barefoot. Defiance? Or merely ignorance? She crossed the threshold. The gate clanged shut behind her, the lock clicking into place. The eunuchs spoke not a word of her arrival, ever wary of listening ears. Yet soon enough, whispers of the emperor's latest perversion would ripple through the inner palace. The gate closed behind her with a heavy thud. In that instant, her legs buckled. She crumpled onto the stone-cold path, palms scraping the ground. Her mind spun, unable to grasp what had become of her. Only days earlier she had huddled in a cellar, waiting for whatever scraps her master tossed her way. Now, people bowed deeply before her. They handled her as though she were fragile porcelain, feeding her, bathing her, combing her hair with careful hands. Yet none dared to speak to her or meet her eyes. She gathered what little strength remained and pushed herself to her feet. She had been told this forsaken place would be her new home. Glancing around, she saw only an overgrown garden choked with weeds and dark, silent buildings. No movement stirred, no lantern glowed, no one waited to greet her. Clutching the oversized robes about her, she walked slowly toward the main hall. Hello? She called softly. No answer came. She pushed the heavy door open. Still, nothing. A shiver ran through her despite the warm night. Inside was darker than the garden had been. Thick dust coated the marble floor. She felt it gritty and cool beneath her bare feet. Directly opposite the entrance, a wide staircase rose and split, one branch leading left, the other right, up to the 2nd floor. "Is anyone here?" she whispered. She expected no reply. The words were only to ease the crushing silence. She climbed the right branch of the stairs. At the first door she tried, she found a small room containing a narrow bed, just enough for her. A dusty linen cover marked it as former servants' quarters. She did not mind. Exhaustion tugging at her, she crawled beneath the cover, curled into a tight ball, and lay trembling, too afraid to let sleep claim her. Throughout the night, faint noises echoed through the empty pavilion, soft footsteps padding along distant corridors, the creak of a door easing open. She squeezed her eyes shut, heart pounding, too frightened to investigate. At last, exhaustion overtook her. She slipped into uneasy dreams, unaware that something or someone watched from the shadows. Sleep brought dreams, memories of the days just past. She sat locked behind iron bars, waiting for the day she would be sold to the pleasure quarters. She did not know her exact age, only that she was around 12. She had never known her parents. As far back as memory reached, she had been a slave. Her unusual beauty drew envy and greed. Skin pale as frost, hair white as snow, eyes the color of silver moonlight. Her master often reminded her, "Just a few more years, girl, and I'll sell you to the brothels for a fortune." To prepare her for a high price in the pleasure quarters, she was given lessons: reading, writing, etiquette, poetry. She became skilled at both xianqi and weiqi. She learned the guchang, drawing clear, mournful notes from its strings with practiced fingers. She was not treated cruelly by most standards, no more than any other slave, yet failure brought punishment. A switch across the back or shoulders, never the face. When she grew too quickly or ate too much, she was locked in her cage for days with little food, all to keep her figure slender. Life was harsh, but it was the only one she knew. Then, one day, imperial guards arrived. They wore ceremonial armor of steel laced with gold and silk. Coiled dragons gleamed on their chestplates and shoulder guards. Tall helmets bore vivid red horsehair plumes that swayed with every movement. They ordered her former master to open the cage. He obeyed with shaking hands. The moment she stepped out, every guard dropped to their knees in perfect unison. Her master threw himself to the ground, forehead pressed to the dirt in a deep kowtow, whimpering, but silent. She was led away, escorted for the first time beyond the walls of the only home she had ever known. She understood none of it. No one spoke to her beyond curt commands. The guards carried her through gate after gate into parts of the capital she had never seen. At last, towering white walls rose around her, and a vermilion gate loomed so high a giant could pass beneath without bowing. There she was handed over to palace women. They undressed her for bathing and gasped at the faint bruises still marking her skin. One maid fled the room, face pale, and returned moments later with an older woman of clear authority. "Who did this to you?" the elder woman demanded gently but firmly. "Speak freely, Nyang Nyang." "It was my fault," she whispered. "I failed a dance step and was punished." Fury flashed across the elder's face. "No one will ever hurt you here, Nyang Nyang," she said, voice tight. "Not ever again." She turned and strode from the room. They bathed her in scented water, dressed her bruises with salve, and clothed her in a fine white and silver-grey robes. Her long white hair was carefully combed and secured with a golden hairpin bearing a single small bell. At last they led her to a polished bronze mirror. She stared at the reflection, wide silver eyes, pale skin, delicate features, and barely recognized the girl staring back. Servants bowed low as she was escorted back to the waiting palanquin. Deeper still they carried her, past yet another wall, until they halted before the grandest hall she had ever imagined. It rose upon a 3-tiered white marble terrace, balustrades carved with writhing dragons and soaring phoenixes. Enormous red pillars, wrapped in golden dragons, supported a towering, double-eaved roof of imperial, yellow-glazed tiles that gleamed even in the fading light. Along the roof ridges marched rows of ceramic beasts, culminating in a great golden dragon at each end. The entire hall breathed overwhelming power and perfect symmetry. An elderly eunuch waited alone at the foot of the terrace. He bowed deeply. "Young, please follow this humble servant into the presence of the God Emperor." Emperor? The word struck her like a blow. Was this a dream or a cruel jest? She said nothing, only followed, heart hammering. As they hurried toward the hall, he spoke in a low, rapid voice. Young, before the God Emperor, ruler of heaven and earth, speak only when addressed. Do not raise your eyes until commanded. Keep your gaze on the floor. Walk halfway between the gates and the dragon stairs, then kneel and remain until told to rise." She struggled to keep up with his brisk pace, the oversized robes tangling around her legs. They halted before towering vermilion gates, inlaid with gold dragons and phoenixes. "Good luck, young," he murmured with a final bow as the great doors swung slowly open. She did as she had been instructed. Head bowed, she walked forward at a measured pace, the hem of the oversized robes brushing the floor and concealing her bare feet. She had slipped off the silk socks and soft slippers while alone in the palanquin. She had always hated anything confining her feet. Now, the cool, smooth marble beneath her soles felt strangely comforting. A small, familiar sensation amid the terror. She entered with head bowed low, walking carefully to the midpoint between the great gates behind her and the dragon stairs ahead. The elder eunuch remained one respectful step behind. Together, they knelt upon the cold marble and waited in silence. After a long moment, she heard him rise. She remained kneeling, eyes fixed on the floor. "God Emperor, ruler of heaven and earth," he announced in a clear voice. "As your majesty commanded, the girl has been found." A low murmur of hundreds of voices rippled through the vast hall. Only then did she realize the chamber was filled with courtiers. She had been too terrified to notice. Abruptly, silence fell like a blade. "Rise, girl," a deep, resonant voice commanded from atop the stairs. She rose obediently, gaze still fixed on the floor. "Look upon me when I address you," the voice thundered. Slowly, fearfully, she raised her eyes. Upon a towering jade dragon throne sat the God Emperor in imperial yellow, his presence commanding the vast hall. Beside him, on a slightly lower phoenix throne, sat the Empress Zhao Jinfeng, radiant in rich red and gold silks embroidered with phoenixes, her beauty sharp and regal. Yet her gaze was cold as winter frost, and it fixed upon the girl with unnerving intensity. A shiver ran through her. "What is your name?" the Emperor asked. "Name?" she stammered, voice barely audible. I have never been given one, your majesty." Another wave of shocked murmurs swept the hall. Empress Zhao's perfect brow arched in faint surprise before her eyes narrowed, studying the girl more closely. "A nameless girl chosen by the moon," the Emperor murmured thoughtfully, stroking his long beard. He leaned toward the Empress and spoke in a low voice meant only for her. She responded with a subtle tilt of her head and a quiet reply, her expression unreadable. Moments later, his voice rang out once more, filling the hall. "Such a thing cannot be. From this day forward, you shall be known as Yua Ling, for you are as ethereal as a spirit of the moon." Yua Ling lifted her gaze fully for the first time, eyes wide and shimmering. Tears welled up unbidden. "What troubles you?" the Emperor asked, his tone gentler now. "Do you dislike the name I have given?" "No, Your Majesty," she whispered, voice trembling. I like it very much." Her hands pressed tightly over her heart. For the first time in her life, she had a name that belonged to her alone. "It is not fitting for the moon consort to weep before the court," he said, yet there was no rebuke in his voice, only a trace of warmth. "Still, receiving one's first name can be overwhelming." He glanced briefly at the Empress, whose lips had tightened almost imperceptibly, then gestured dismissively to the assembled courtiers. "The Empress herself will see you settled in the palace. We shall speak again soon." A sharp intake of breath and fresh murmurs swept the hall. Empress Zhao Jinfeng turned her head toward the Emperor, unmistakable shock flashing across her regal features before she swiftly masked it. "This way, Zhaozhu," the elder eunuch murmured urgently. "A small bow, then retreat backward. Never turn your back on the throne." She copied his movements precisely until the great vermilion gates thudded shut behind them. "Zhaozhu," the elder eunuch sighed, weariness heavy in his voice. "Your life has just become far more difficult than you can imagine." He escorted her back to the waiting palanquin. "Now we shall take you to your new residence," he said quietly. Then, pressing soft silk socks and embroidered slippers into her hands, he added, "And for mercy's sake, do not appear barefoot before the God Emperor again. You endanger not only yourself, but every servant who attends you." The palanquin rose once more, carrying Yua Ling toward the darkened moon pavilion. You've just listened to Chapter 1 of The Moon Consort of the Inner Palace, brought to you by Elven Made In Publishing. Written by Kay Bauer and narrated by John Lee H. Woo. If you enjoyed this chapter, follow us on X for updates and more. John Lee H. Woo at John Lee Writing and Kay Bauer at Elven Made In. Catch the newest chapters on Elven Made In's X, Substack, Royal Road, and Wattpad. The full audiobook is available on Elven Made In's Spotify and YouTube channels. Tune in next week for the next exciting chapter. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support the story. And thanks for listening.